what makes a truly great portrait image? It's an interesting question because I don't believe that there's just one singular answer. I believe it's a multitude of things. And in the past, I've described it as creating a perfect storm where all of the elements come together to provide you with a single narrative that has great storytelling and impact. And over my last 21 years as a portrait photographer, those instances are quite rare. Those instances where you create something that leaps through the lens at you and then leaps onto the canvas as a photograph as something that's that perfect storm. Really quite rarely happens. But it did happen recently in our studio, and I'd like to share with you the story behind it. So at the start of this year, we were contacted by the voiceover artist Chris Tester to create a new portfolio of images to update his brand and update his website. And he contacted us with just one condition.
No mics.
That's right, everything else was on the table. The only thing we couldn't shoot was microphones. As a voiceover artist, he didn't want to do something cliche, and he wanted to elevate the shoot to a new creative level. And I love that. I love the fact that he wanted to think outside the box and do something completely different, which gave us a completely free rein. When we first meet a new client, it's really important for us to have a discovery call so that we can find out a little bit more about them, get chatting with them, and make sure that we're the right fit for them to bring their vision to life. And the first call went brilliantly with Chris. I loved his direct approach. I loved the fact that he had not only a clear vision, but he was able to go off onto tangents and allow us to develop ideas, but he also shut us down on ideas that he didn't want to go down. And that really helped the efficiency of the next stage, which was building up mood boards and building up ideas for us to explore different avenues of creativity within the shoot. And once we'd done that, we'd hit upon the idea that we wanted to use the suit that he'd used in his last portfolio shoot with a different photographer. A few years back, it was a blue three-piece suit with a nice blue waistcoat, really smart. But we thought about the idea of maybe how we can destroy this or amend this or break out of it or do something completely different with this. And what we ended up doing was we ended up building a set for Chris based on this blue suit. So we planned a design around 3 boxes of different shapes and different sizes that we could use in studio to build a set and also to use as posing blocks. We went down to the hardware store down at the end of the road here, a B&Q outlet, where we could purchase wood that was light enough to be movable but also sturdy enough to stand on. And they have a brilliant cutting service in store. So we went down there with our plans and our measurements, and they actually cut the pieces to fit in store for us, ready for us just to put straight into the boot of the car and drive into our studio for fitting. And when we brought them back to the studio, it was really just a very simple case of just attaching the boxes together, painting them with different shades of blue and putting them up. And as we were going through this process, we were sending Chris the images, we were filling up our group chat with the story of what we were doing and how we were building it and how we were getting on and building up the excitement for the shoot that was coming in just a few weeks' time. When Chris came into the studio, he had an absolutely brilliant energy about him, not only a creative energy, but a professional energy as well. We were able to print off our mood boards, print off our shoot ideas and have him look at them in the studio as we were going so that we could plan the shoot as we were going through. So we weren't flapping around trying to do lots of different ideas and wasting time. We had a really clear, efficient direction through the shoot of going from our starter idea through to the next idea to the next and making sure that we were fulfilling expectations all the way through. Because communication is so important when you're trying to create brilliant portrait photography. Photography is an entirely collaborative process. It's entirely a two-way street. Oftentimes I've heard that photographs are a story of two things. They're a story of the subject and they're a story of the photographer themselves. And sometimes they just work in different proportions to each other. We wanted to make sure that this shoot was as much about Chris as possible. That involved his buy-in and it involved his trust in us to look after his brand throughout the whole process. Now, it's really important to note that these mood boards have been put in place not to copy these ideas, but just to give us a starting point for us to develop ideas and to do something different. And that was something that Chris was really really super at doing. He was super at getting on the boxes, getting around the boxes, getting into poses, doing different things, and there was very rarely a moment in the shoot where we would present him with an idea and he would say no to it. He would just go for it. A really, really enthusiastic guy who just wanted to give his all. And obviously with his background in voice acting, the amount of voice acting he has to do for all these interesting and intricate computer game characters and trolls and gargoyles and goblins and warlocks and wizards and all these characters that he portrays in his day job, were able to come across with all of these different faces and all of these different expressions, which is just a photographer's dream. It was just an absolute joy to collaborate with him, and we knew right at the start of the shoot that we were going to work ourselves up to a point where we were going to capture something really special. During the shoot, we also offer live tethering on a big screen that we have downstairs in our studio, which offers Chris the opportunity to see the images as they were being shot, and that allows us to stop regularly throughout the session and make sure that we're still on track and to select images as we go through, which makes the whole culling process a lot simpler. We moved on through the shoot, we're using lots of different ideas. We even used these Colorama backdrops, not as backdrops, but we rolled all of our offcuts up as like tubes of paper, and you got them to hold them in front of him, and we used a longer focal length on our lens to get in and get those headshots and get those different expressions and really stick to those brand colors, and just look at some of the expressions on some of these shots that we're getting out of Chris. We then turn the boxes around, and we don't just want to use the boxes as things to pose on, we want to use the boxes as things to pose in, and look at the embodiment that he gives the characters and the things that he's pulling and the shapes that he's making with his body, and therefore the shapes that he's making in his face. By going all in on a photo shoot, by giving yourself up to the idea of doing something different, by not staying within your comfort zones, and by doing something different, we're able to create these different types of shapes, these different types of forms, and these images that will really, really stand out and in a multitude of images online. Think of the amount of images there are on your various social media platforms. You want those scroll stoppers, you want those images that are going to stop, and by doing something different, we're really putting ourselves out there to create those scroll stoppers to get people to stop, to look, and to consider your brand. It was really empowering to see this concept evolve throughout the shoot, and we worked ourselves up to the point where we could get to the main event, where we could get to the main idea that we had for this shoot, which was to paint the suit with orange paint. Got a massive paintbrush, we painted Chris all the way up from his foot all the way up to his face with his permission, and we ruined the suit, destroyed the suit, and used this complementary color scheme within the set that we built, within that Colorama space, within those boxes, to create some stoic images, to create some characterful images, to create some defiant images, and to create some images that really had impact in not only color harmony, but also in storytelling. We even used the concept of using mirrors in the shoot to create in-camera effects, where we can have Chris looking off camera, but then looking back at us through the mirror, which gave us a really sort of abstract, interesting feel. It's just so brilliant to see this process, our takeover shoots, our main shoots, our all-day shoots where we put our heart and soul into everything, that are weeks and months in the process to build up to these moments, and to see this collaboration between us as the creators and the photographers and you as the artist towards this transformative process, giving you images that just set you apart and that just elevate everything. So going back to the original question, what makes a great portrait? There is one image that stands out from this session. It's before we started painting Chris and doing all of these crazy ideas. It's a really simple idea where we built up the blocks and we just had Chris just in a t-shirt, nothing dramatic, nothing sensational about the color of it or the lighting of it, just a really simple setup, and just had him step off the top block. And why do I love this image so much? Why do I believe that it makes a great portrait? Well, there's a simple use of shape and composition within the image. There's a simple triangle right at the top of the image. But it really speaks to, in my mind, the storytelling and the narrative of being a creative in a creative industry. Taking that step off, taking that chance, taking that almost that leap of faith into the unknown. Because the creative industry, as I know from working in it for over 2 decades, is fraught with all of those uncertainties. It's fraught with not knowing and taking risks and trying new things and not being afraid to fail. And that's what I think that we do as creatives in this industry. And that's why I think this image is great, because it's a representation of that. So what makes a great photograph? It isn't really one thing. It can be a fleeting moment, something that happens in the world of street photography, a moment that's been and gone, never to be replicated again. But in my experience and in my wheelhouse, it's about collaboration. It's about creating an environment where everything comes together to create that perfect storm. And quite often, my favorite images that I've taken in studio, my favorite portrait photographs, are simple. They're not complicated ideas. They're just simple compositions within a frame that tell a simple story that goes just a little bit deeper. And I'm not naive. I know that a lot of people's favorite images will just be ones on their phones. Moments from family life, moments from their everyday life, shots of their kids, little intrinsic moments. And that's the brilliant thing about photography, is that it can be anything you want it to be. And its value is based intrinsically on how much personal value you attach to it. And as I always say, you'll never know the value of a photograph until it's all you have left. It's what I love about this industry, and it's what I've loved about being a photographer since I was a teenager. I love creating moments in time that cannot be replicated. I love creating and collaborating with other artists like Chris and meeting brilliant people in this industry. And I'm really, really lucky. I've managed to make a career out of this, and I've managed to meet such a range of brilliant, amazing, creative people. And that's what any technological advancement can't replace. Real, authentic moments that hold a value somewhere deep in here.